Hi everyone, this is Dr. Vaishnavi, your ENT educator, and we are going to have a quick recall of the INI-CET May 26 session and the ENT questions that appeared from here. Well, to just give you a quick understanding that this is going to be only a generic recall based upon what the students have given to us so far. So the language of the question, the options that were asked may vary from the actual questions, and eventually when we take recall from a larger number of students, we will be able to give you a final recall that will be uploaded on the app. So now let's start with the first question, which is what is the best treatment for severe sudden sensory neural hearing loss? So sudden sensory neural hearing loss is a medical emergency, and we say that it is a hearing loss that occurs more than 30 decibels. So if you have more than 30 decibels of hearing loss in three consecutive frequencies, in less than 3 days duration. So in less than 3 days duration, if somebody is having more than 30 decibel hearing loss in three consecutive frequencies, then we say that it is a sudden SNHL. So for sudden SNHL, we always say that it is emergency. Why do we say it's an emergency? Because the earlier you diagnose and the earlier you rehabilitate, the better will be the outcomes. So whenever we talk of treatment for sudden SNHL, we always talk of steroids. Steroids are the mainstay of therapy. Now, steroids with aspirin, gentamicin with steroids, oral steroids, or topical, or like some of them you have told us that it's intratympanic steroids. So yeah, we do give intratympanic steroids, we give oral steroids, we even give IV steroids, but systemic steroids is preferred or the first line therapy over intratympanic or topical steroids. Aspirin may be added, but it is not a definitive factor that is going to be given for severe sudden SNHL. So the answer is going to be your oral steroids. Gentamicin is an ototoxic drug, so you will never give. Intratympanic steroids will be the second line of therapy after your oral steroids. So oral steroids or IV steroids form the mainstay. Along with that, you may add intratympanic steroids, or if the patient has failed oral steroids, then you're going to go for intratympanic steroids. So the answer is going to be your oral steroids. Now, the next question is the labeled muscle attached to the cartilaginous part of the eustachian tube and the soft palate is. So you can see here, I think the question was asking you about this muscle, which is near the eustachian tubal opening. So a line diagram like this was probably given in your exam. I always have given this example multiple times in the classes also. There are two muscles which will help to open the eustachian tube. And I always say the example of a flight, right? Whenever we go on a flight, our ear gets blocked. What do? We yawn, we chew, we use a bubble gum, we drink water because we want to activate the palatal muscles. Which two muscles? Tensor veli palatini and levator veli palatini. And out of the two, the tensor veli palatini has a higher function of opening the eustachian tube as compared to levator veli palatini. So even if you didn't know this line diagram, the best bet to take a guess which the muscle which is near the eustachian tube will be your tensor veli palatini. So the question in your exam was marking this. So this is nothing but your tensor veli palatini muscle. That is what you should have answered. Which of the following is not a part of Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome? So if you see, Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome is a PYQ that has been asked not now but quite long ago, maybe in 2020 or 19, somewhere there I have read this question and I have included in my notes as well. So Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome is a syndrome that we see with facial palsy, where a patient will have recurrent facial palsy. Along with that, there will be swelling of lips, which we can give to orofacial edema. Typically, they will have swelling of lips and fissured tongue or grooved tongue. So this syndrome is something that we typically discuss even in the classes. And I always tell you, learn what are the other causes of recurrent facial palsy. Because normally we get a lot of questions from Bell's palsy, herpes zoster oticus, and some years ago we also had Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome. But the going forward questions could come on recurrent facial palsy, which is caused by facial nerve tumors, sarcoidosis, diabetes, etc. So this is something that we have done in the classes. So this is very simple, not a part of the Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome, is going to be your proptosis. The next question is, which of the following muscle is shown and is the sole abductor of the vocal cord? So I believe they had given you options like this, where they had marked you like, say, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4, something like this, and you had to find out which is the abductor. Now all of you know the abductor of the vocal cord is the posterior cricoarytenoid. Now the difficult part was to identify which is that abductor. right? Again, we have done a lot of images on this. Posterior cricoarytenoid is a fan shaped muscle which is located posteriorly. So let's say even you didn't know anything, we know thyroid cartilage meets anteriorly, right? So this is anterior, and obviously this has to be posterior. So now once you got the orientation of anterior and posterior, you had to choose a muscle that is located posteriorly, because we know the abductor of the vocal cord is posterior cricoarytenoid, right? So when we know this muscle is the abductor and it is located posteriorly, now the question is which of the two? Now there are two muscles here, one here which are thinking, is this the posterior cricoarytenoid or this one? Because these two muscles are definitely located posteriorly, while this is your thyroarytenoid and this is your, if you see, this is your thyroarytenoid and this is your lateral cricoarytenoid muscle. So these two muscles obviously are located more anteriorly as compared to these two muscles. So now we have this muscle that is located between one arytenoid and another arytenoid, and we call this muscle as interarytenoid muscle. So what are we left with? This is going to be your posterior cricoarytenoid, which is going to be your fan shaped muscle. So the answer is going to be option C, which is here in your answer. A patient presents to OPD with complaints of pain and pressure and sense of fullness around the face, head, and congested nose. Which of the following X-ray is best for visualizing frontal sinus? I think this is a repeat question. So whenever we talk of frontal sinus, the best view is going to be your Caldwell view or the occipitofrontal view. That will give you the best view of the frontal sinus. For the maxillary sinus, we use the Waters view, right? So I think this is very easy. We're not going to discuss much there. Which of the following is incorrectly matched? And as soon as your eyes go to nasopharyngeal cancer, I'm sure each one of us know that NPC is caused by Epstein-Barr virus and not by cytomegalovirus. So I think this is again a no-brainer. Everybody would have been able to answer. Even if you didn't know the rest of it, like ACD, even if you didn't know it, looking at nasopharyngeal cancer, you're very, very sure that it is not by CMV, it is by EPV. Which of the following drugs is not used in the treatment of mucormycosis? So mucormycosis, all of us know that liposomal form of amphotericin B is the first line of therapy for mucormycosis. It is the drug of choice. That is the first drug that you will start for patients with mucormycosis. But if you all remember, during the times of second wave of COVID, when patient had mucor and we didn't have a sufficient supply of liposomal form of amphotericin B, and because it's quite expensive and not affordable by many people got posaconazole and isavuconazole as well. So posaconazole, isavuconazole can be given, but are they the first line of therapy? No. These are only given to down treat, meaning once you have started the treatment with the first line therapy, then to when you're in the second stage or third stage, when you're treating the patient, eventually in the last few stages you're going to give isavuconazole and posaconazole. So these are the drugs that are used in mucormycosis. Voriconazole is the drug that we typically give for aspergillus infection. So for aspergillus it is going to be voriconazole, but for mucor it is going to be posaconazole, isavuconazole and amphotericin B. A patient with recurrent epistaxis and a mass in the right nasal cavity shows bony invasion on CT. Most likely diagnosis is. So there is bleeding, there is mass, there is bony invasion. Now some of you have told there was a male patient, female patient, tha, nahi tha, we don't know about that. But let's think about any mass that is going to cause bleeding and also bony changes, right? So of course we know that antrochoinal polyp definitely will not cause bony invasion. It's a benign polyp, right? It's because of infection. So it is definitely the answer that is not going to cause any bony invasion on CT scan. Of course, it is not even going to cause epistaxis. It might cause sometimes bleeding or a blood-stained discharge, but it is not repeatedly going to cause epistaxis or any invasion. Olfactory neuroblastoma or and esthesioneuroblastoma are definitely going to cause bony hyperostosis that we see, bony changes and bony invasion. JNA is locally invasive tumor, so it is also going to cause invasion on CT scan. So the rest of the three are simple. The answer, even if you don't know by ruling out, we know that it's antrochoinal polyp. 65-year-old HIV patient presented to you with blood-stained nasal discharge and a black SCR. So whenever you get a black SCR, you should think about mucor. So that's a very simple thing. Now mucor belongs to which species? It is belonging to Rhizopus. Again, this is a no-brainer, very simple. Whenever you have black SCR, mucor is the answer and mucor belongs to your Rhizopus species. So I think ENT questions were okay. I mean, they were not something that we really didn't know, but we could really solve them if we would have just applied a little bit of understanding and a little bit of ruling out. And I think it was something that was doable if you just did have a little bit of presence of mind. So do let me know in the comment section below if you feel there were some changes so that we can change the questions eventually and upload the final content onto our app. Thank you.